There are two dilemmas that rattle the human skull. How do you hold on to someone who won't stay? And how do you get rid of someone who won't go?
From Pod 617 Productions, it's Schein On, a presentation of Berkman, Bottger, Newman, and Schein. Now here's your host, attorney Evan Schein.
Episode 8 of the Schein On podcast. I'm Evan Schein. As always, David Yaz, the executive producer of the Schein On podcast, is with us. David, how are you?
Great. Well, not too bad. You know, for 2021, you always pause before you answer that question, I guess.
And David, I got to tell you, after this episode, that good is going to be great because we have a fantastic and fun show today. And we're going to talk about dating during the pandemic and how to find love in 2021. And who better to do that with than the best in the business, the great New York City matchmaker, founder of the Modern Love Club, Amy Van Doran. She has revolutionized the matchmaking industry and the approach to dating in New York City since she came on the matchmaking scene, taking on the dating challenges faced by so many New Yorkers. Amy Van Doran is the featured guest this week on episode 8 of the Schein On podcast. And during the interview with Amy, we are going to take a few of the dating questions that have come into the Schein On podcast inbox, which is scheinonpodcast@gmail.com. And we are going to get answers to these questions and more from Amy during the interview, which is coming up on the other side of the docket.
All right, counselor, if you're ready, it's time for the docket.
Let's do it.
And now, let's see what's on the docket. All right, Evan, got some celebrity news this week. Ben Affleck, my boy from Boston, Ben Affleck, shares how his divorce from Jennifer Garner has helped him become a better actor. And Ben also said that what he wants to say publicly and privately to Jennifer Garner is thank you for being thoughtful, considerate, responsible, and a great mom and person. And he said he never thought his battle with addiction would result in a divorce. It did, of course. So what he's saying is, I guess, the whole ordeal, the whole journey with Jennifer Garner has made him a better actor, which I guess is nice. I don't know. Any thoughts on this, Evan?
Dave, I'll tell you what, look, you mentioned Ben Affleck becoming a better actor. And look, it still sticks in my head, the movie Good Will Hunting, going back to Boston, a little old school, movie film right there for you. And, look, Affleck's candid about his past experiences and relationships and marriage. And he opens up about how these experiences, the good and the tough ones, have allowed him to learn, to grow, and to be better in his role as an actor. And for so many people, Affleck included, it's about perspective. It's about insight. And divorce and relationships, both the ones that work and the ones that don't work. What do they teach us? They teach us something. And it's so hard for people, and I tell my own clients as a divorce attorney, when you're going through the process, it's hard to see. It's hard to appreciate. And sometimes it takes years for people to realize just to appreciate how the tough times and your experiences can make you more focused, maybe better at your career, maybe better in future relationships, a better friend, a better parent, and a better overall person because you have lived through some dark times, some hard times, and some challenging times. And I tell my own clients, divorce can make you stronger and you can thrive in post-divorce life.
And, what is that quote that Michael Jordan said? He's been called upon to take the final shot in the game and failed 26 times or something like that. And he says, I failed and failed again, and that's why I'm so good, or whatever it is. But, I think it gives people texture. I've talked before. I've been through a divorce. Absolutely learned a ton. If you don't face adversity during your life, then what happens when adversity comes up? You're not prepped for it. And you also, I think most people, depending upon the length of the divorce, they are, in a matter of speaking, different people at the end of the marriage. And so they've learned about themselves along the way. It's still obviously a sad thing. And obviously, Affleck didn't enjoy this time, battling addiction, getting divorced. But now he's like a wicked better person for it now, Evan, as he would as he would say in his Good Will Hunting persona.
There we go. And I got to tell you, I love the accent right there. But Dave, you mentioned something which I want to touch on. Divorce, it's such a raw, emotional time. And when you're in the beginning stages of divorce, it's hard to see, beyond the next day, beyond the next minute. Right. And it takes that time to process, that time to heal. And you mentioned Michael Jordan. Look, when Jordan was missing shots, right, I'm sure it was hard. I'm sure it was tough. I'm sure it was emotional because he wanted to be better. But you learn from your mistakes. You learn from your experiences. And divorce, going through adversity, it can teach you so much, and you can become a stronger person, a better person on the other side of it.
For sure. And you also, I think, in time learn to appreciate things about your ex-partner that you didn't in the moment. Time heals all wounds, right? Time has a way of softening things. It's why we say to ourselves, don't make rash decisions in the moment, and don't send an email when you're angry. And when you're going through a divorce, you might not even be thinking straight. Years later, it all comes around. And so good for Ben.
It's true. And Dave, I tell clients, you mentioned emails. Don't send an email during a divorce that you wouldn't want the judge to read. Take a step back, process it. Send me as the divorce attorney a draft, as opposed to just firing off an email to your soon-to-be ex. And the other thing is, you mentioned about learning what you may look for in someone else after a relationship. But people learn more about themselves having gone through that experience. People learn about things they want out of their own life, the direction that they want to lead, and whether that's a career, whether that's, taking life in a different direction, you in many ways could become more focused and better overall.
Absolutely. Well, the next one comes from the newly installed First Lady, Jill Biden. She did an interview with Kelly Clarkson about love and divorce on the Today Show. First, I couldn't figure out why she was talking to Kelly Clarkson, but I guess Kelly Clarkson's on the Today Show now. I didn't get the memo. But why don't we, Evan, if you'll entertain, we'll listen to a little bit of the audio here.
And if you can take one day at a time, and things will get better.
Candid and comforting words from First Lady Joe Biden, speaking with Kelly Clarkson about a topic that's personal for both, divorce.
I look back on it now and I think, if I hadn't gotten divorced, I never would have met Joe. I wouldn't have the beautiful family I have now.
Yeah.
So I really think things happen for the best.
Dr. Biden is known for her strong partnership with her husband, now President Joe Biden. But their marriage isn't her first. In her conversation with Clarkson, Dr. Biden spoke about her split in the 70s from her first husband, Bill Stevenson, and offered encouragement to the pop star who's in the middle of her own divorce.
I want to tell you, Kelly, this is what I would say to you if I were your mother.
Yeah.
My mother always said to me, things are going to look better tomorrow.
Clarkson filed for divorce last summer.
So, in case you missed it, to be clear, this is a reporting by the Today Show about something that happened on the Kelly Clarkson show, just to be clear. But pretty interesting. Hey, good for Kelly Clarkson getting the interview with the First Lady. And pretty cool moment there, I thought, to her to be able to give advice to Kelly Clarkson, who we've talked about before on the podcast. What did you think, Evan?
David, you're 100% spot on. It was a cool moment, but it was more than that. It was powerful. It was incredible words and such, great nuggets of wisdom by the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, as she talks to Kelly Clarkson about love after divorce. And she gives her such real, candid, honest advice from someone who's been there and someone who's gone through the process and the experience. And they talk about how to heal after a divorce and the light at the end of the tunnel. Such strong and such incredible, powerful words and advice offered by the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. And the First Lady says something so powerful. She says, I look back on it now and think, if I hadn't gotten divorced, I never would have met Joe. I wouldn't have the beautiful family I have now. And to me, wow. I hope this resonates with so many people who are listening to the Schein on podcast and people who are going through a divorce. Look, Kelly Clarkson's a celebrity and she's going through a divorce. And just like your divorce, her divorce is hard. It's challenging. just like so many of my clients as a divorce attorney and people out there who are trying to figure out how to get through the process, how to wake up the next day and be without the person that you said I do, and you married, and you fell in love with. And celebrity or not, you are not alone as you go through the divorce process. And look, David, as we've talked about before with the great guests we've had on the Schein podcast, it's so hard to believe that there's a light at the end of the road. It's hard to believe that happiness can exist after divorce and that you can find love again. And it's so hard to see it when you're in it. But as Dr. Joe Biden said, as the First Lady said, it happens. It exists. And if you stick through and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, it can happen for you too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they get divorced, they immediately think they're stigmatized for life, that they're a failure. And really, it helps to hear someone who's been there before. I know, Evan, that when clients come to you, you come with the benefit of years and years of helping people that you've helped through to the other side. So you, I imagine, can tell them, hey, this is normal, right? Like, and this does happen, and it's more common than you know, and you're not stained for life, right?
David, and I've had clients, after I work with clients who are going through divorce, I've had former clients reach out 2 years later, 5 years later, send me holiday cards, pick up the phone, reach out, send me an email about their new life, their wonderful life, their new partnership, their new marriage, the relationship that their kids have, with kids from a prior marriage. And when I hear that as a divorce attorney, there is absolutely nothing that makes me happier than to hear that. Because when I tell clients going through a divorce, you're going to be okay. The second act, the second chapter, the next stage and phase of your life, you'll get through it and you'll be in a happier place. It's so hard for people, understandably so, to appreciate that, to see it in the moment. But when you get through it and you can see it and live it and experience it, I'll tell you, it's an absolutely beautiful and wonderful thing.
Great point, Evan. I once told a friend of mine, revealed to him for the first time that I either was getting divorced or was just recently divorced. And he said, oh, that's interesting. He took out a photo and he showed me, it was a photo of his grandchildren, but there were also a lot of adults in the photo. It turns out these kids had 8 grandparents because both the marriage on each side had ended. And yet the photo was so beautiful because everyone was smiling. Everyone was getting along. And for me to see that, I was like, wow, yeah, there's happiness on the other side. Sometimes, of course, you hear from clients that from years back, Evan will say, Evan, you did such a great job and I hope you're doing well. And by the way, I'm getting divorced again. Can we talk?
No, that happens as well. Look, I've done prenups for people. I've done their divorce. I've done their prenup, divorce, and then prenup again. And this just happened recently. And finally, I said to my client, I said, this whole marriage thing, it's not really working out. But,
yeah,
I can say that because I had a good relationship with them.
Yes, very good.
Our featured guest this week on the Schein On podcast is Amy Van Doran, New York's coolest matchmaker, according to Vogue magazine. She's the founder of the Modern Love Club, a New York City-based matchmaking agency, and one of the best in the business and the go-to matchmaker for helping people find love in New York City. She has revolutionized the approach to dating and finding love. She has her pulse on the dating scene in New York City like no one else. She has been featured in New York Magazine, Glamour, Cosmo, Time Out, the New York Post, the New York Daily News, Bustle, Elle Magazine, and the list just goes on and on. We are excited to talk with Amy about dating and finding love in New York City and to talk about what's on everyone's mind today, navigating the world of dating during the pandemic. Amy is nice enough to join us. I appreciate the time. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for that wonderful intro, Evan.
Of course. And Amy, I got to tell you, I am absolutely thrilled to have you on, as the questions from listeners on the Schein On podcast and also my own clients. As a divorce attorney, I work with people who are looking to start dating and who are single, and people are looking to find love during a pandemic. Everybody's wondering, what are the rules of dating during a pandemic? And we're going to get into this and more. But I want to start with asking you how you got into the matchmaking business. And I would imagine there's some story behind the name of your agency, the Modern Love Club, which I think is absolutely terrific and I love.
Yeah, so 12 years ago, I started off this matchmaking journey as sort of an art piece because I just wanted to hear people's, life stories. And so people started offering, because I've always connected people, even like in middle school, I would have like singles mixers and I would, try to set people up at the mall. And my stepmom, according to her, like I had like introduced her to my dad as like a child and match made them.
To something at a young age.
Yeah, I really just like to, I don't know, like if you see one side of the thing, like I just have to put the thing with it. Like I just am obsessed with making things match. And it's not just people, like it's like things, like visual things have to match. And like, everything, like I dyed my hair orange. Now like everything's turning orange around me. But I really just want the things. I just have to solve the thing where the thing goes. And so 12 years ago, I started interviewing single people. And now, like in an average week, I will listen to 50 people for an hour each, tell me their life stories. And so now I've interviewed over 10,000 people. And this room behind me is a room of just all of my matchmaking files because it's all very analog. And so it's been sort of like a durational exercise in sort of witnessing people's stories of heartbreak and pain and what they're looking for and trying to solve it. And thankfully that this art piece turned into a career, and I'm really happy to have found what I'm good at in this world. And it's really nice to be able to help solve, I can't work with every person, but, I get to work with 16 people at a time and to make them, feel less alone on this journey of like, making them feel less lonely. So it's really an honor to be able to witness what's going on with what I think is the most important thing in the world, people's hearts.
I mean, such a great point. And I want to ask you about the name Modern Love Club. Where does it come from? There's
a David Bowie. I like David Bowie a lot. And so there's a song, Modern Love.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think it's great. And Amy, you've been called by Vogue magazine as New York City's coolest matchmaker, which in a city like New York, it's no easy feat to stand out. How have you done it? And what's been your approach?
Wow, what an interesting question. I don't think of myself as, because I'm myself, I can't think of myself as cool or uncool. I just have always kind of done whatever I want all the time. And I think that when you have that relationship to yourself where you're not trying to fit into any mold or, I think that whenever you kind of stand in who you are authentically, other people that are also value that attribute will kind of come to you. So I've been, my brand kind of self-selects people that are, interesting or doing cool stuff or, making nice art or doing cool stuff in the world. I don't know. It also helped that, for many years I was doing my matchmaking in an art gallery in the East Village. And so people that were coming in to look at the art were like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, actually, this is a matchmaking art gallery. And so it was just, there was a scene around the Modern Love Club for many years.
And Amy, that's brilliant. And I want to ask you, what's it like for people who are single and living in a city like New York, who are struggling to find love, all the hustle and bustle in New York City, when people try to navigate the world of dating on their own? How does someone navigate it and figure it out?
I was very concerned 2 years ago. I was having like an existential kind of breakdown. And there's, because I guess I sit and I'm hearing, hours and hours of heartbreak every week. And there was 2 years ago, I was starting to think that like maybe like in this time period, people were just collectively not going to get it together. They weren't going to connect. They're going to keep going on more and more Tinder dates. And the genders, the sexes were not connecting on things and they're, communicating in different ways. And I thought like, this is a true love crisis. And like, everyone's just going to be alone in their apartments with, their cell phones and just keep trying to date the next person, but not actually like settling down and like falling in love. And maybe like traditional love was like was on the way out. And like, we were just going to, be stuck in this like hellish cycle of just the next person over and over again. And I got very depressed and very concerned. And then something kind of crazy happened, which was this pandemic. And it took a year of people being forced to be alone, not knowing how to date and going through their issues. And the people are coming out of the woodwork and they're like, actually, you know what? Like having a partner that I have a heart and mind connection with that I want to invest for the rest of my life is actually really important because they really figured out like without all the distraction of like, oh, I can go out every night. I can meet a new girl. I can, do this, that, or the other. When they got real with themselves and they sat with themselves for this last year and they did that like personal work, they're like, actually, no, life is better with a partner, with a real connection. And so it's actually, the pandemic has been sort of a blessing for people wanting relationships, because a lot of the men that were not wanting relationships are coming back out and being like, okay. And my clients are matching so much faster. So in the past, like maybe I wouldn't, the first match that I would have for a client, I wouldn't send them the best one. I would send them a person that they would get along with and kind of get them back into dating. But now people, like, whoever I'm sending them first, they're just like being like, all right, thanks, Amy. And then like, I won't hear from them. Like, they're just like, people are taking the person and they're like, okay, cool, thanks. And I'm like, wait, no, like, don't you want to do a little bit more dating? Like, you just started dating. Like, don't you want to go on a second date with someone? And they're like, everyone's just, bonding much quicker, because it is so risky to keep meeting new people.
And I want to ask you, I mean, are people looking for a deeper connection because of the pandemic? Or people, has this been a time of self-reflection for so many, and has sort of changed some of the mindset, for people and how they approach the dating world?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, everyone's being so much more considerate. They're having serious and difficult conversations, like in the same way that you would have around, sex or STDs. People are having these conversations like, well, who are you also seeing? Or like, what's your consent level? Like, people are using words like consent, or like they're checking in with like how comfortable a person is. And I think it's really remarkable. I mean, I'm a little bit worried, because I'm seeing with my clients, there is an upswing in like social anxiety. So when they do go to meet a person after doing their Zoom dates, there's a lot more pressure, and they kind of are psyching themselves out. And so that first, when you start to redate after like, a year of pandemic, it is challenging and scary, but everyone's scared. Nobody's like socially like at their best right now. Like it is going to be bumpy, but yeah, no, everyone, it's crazy. It really is. Because people are like, by the time that we're able to really actually engage with each other in the physical world, and people are ready. We thought this was going to be a couple weeks, and it's been a year. And so they want the second that they can really start getting out there and dating, like I went on a date the other day at 8 a.m. for coffee in the middle of like a snowstorm, right? Like I had my mask on, my winter coat, so you can only see the eyes, and it's 8 a.m. I'm like not fully awake. And I have to say, it was kind of unpleasant. It was kind of unpleasant standing outside, like shivering and holding my coffee cup and trying to figure out if I had I very much look forward to having a glass of wine at nighttime inside with handsome men again. I think it's going to be great.
Absolutely. And Amy, I want to ask you, the virtual dates, the socially distant dates, but going back to Zooms and, people having drinks, in a virtual world, I would think that there's some advantages to a first date on Zoom. You can develop a deeper connection. You can get to know someone. Do you see the virtual dating scene continuing in some respects as we get on the other side of this pandemic?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I think that the Zoom dating, if you're thoughtful with the medium, right? Like you have to set up your Zoom room, and you have to put it on a thing and make your movie set and make sure that it's lit well. And, you do still have to set the scene. Like you can't be lazy with it. You have to make it nice. But I think there's really great benefits to Zoom dating. One, you can date people that you have more things in common with, not just like based on like where they, like, do they live close to you? Like some of my favorite matches this year, they would have never, like one of my male clients got together with this girl in Austin. He would have never been open to dating someone in Austin, but like, I was like, that's your match, but because everyone is dating virtually anyways, it didn't matter. But I think it's wonderful to not have to figure out physicality before you've connected from a heart and mind place, right? Like it's forcing us to get to know each other before, like, like in the past, people were like getting a little drunk and then like hooking up and then, not talking to each other again. And so we're actually bonding before hooking up. And so I think we're forced to get to know each other. I think it's wonderful.
Absolutely. Amy, you mentioned, the geographical reach of dating, right? You have a client and she could meet someone who lives in Austin, Texas. And I would also think that as more people are working from home, from inside their apartments, and people don't necessarily need to live right where they work, that's also going to change the dating world as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. My prediction for whenever everyone has their vaccinations and stuff because they don't have to work in a physical location. I think a lot of people are going to be living in a lot of different places. And so there's no longer going to be the, like, I'm a New Yorker, I have to date another New Yorker kind of mentality. It's, I can exist anywhere. And because people have been so starved for traveling, they're going to be told, like, like, yeah, you're in California. Like, I'll come meet up with you. Like, we'll set up our little digital nomad situation and like, let's go have adventure. Let's go to the beach in Mexico. Yeah. Like, I think that people are going to be physically, we learned how to digitally exist. And now there's a certain freedom that's going to come with that, which is opening up love to, like if you're in, Idaho or something, like you don't have to just date people in Idaho. You can find the great love of your life in London, or, like you can really find amazing matches, and it's not just based on like who's close by.
No, and that's an absolutely fantastic thing. And I want to go back to something you mentioned about setting up the scene in your apartment, right? I have a client I represent. She's going through a divorce and short marriage, mid-30s. She works in finance at a hedge fund. And when the pandemic hit, she didn't want to miss a beat when it came to dating. And she said, Evan, I'm going to hire a wardrobe consultant. I'm going to decorate my apartment. I'm going to hire a lighting consultant. And she went all out. Have you seen that from your clients? Have you seen people look to set up their home situations because of the way dating has evolved due to the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, your house now is your, you can't impress a person by taking them to a cool restaurant. And then, like your house is it's your set, it's your personal brand. And it's, I mean, people are going to immediately see like, oh, do you make your bed? Do you think about lighting? Do you have like a nice candle? And you can immediately visualize when you're dating virtually being in that person's space because you're already there. And so I think it's very clever of her to be thoughtful about the lighting in her wardrobe, because just because it is virtual, it doesn't mean that we're still real, and you can still, so I think it's brilliant that she is putting that kind of consideration into things. And I think people, as they get more used to Zoom dating, the ones that are excelling are the ones that are being really strategic with it. Like at the beginning, like some of my male clients, they wouldn't change their shirt. They're like, like there'd be like food stains on there. Like they'd be walking around. You could see like their dishes in the back, and, they very quickly learned like that doesn't work.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that didn't work in person. It also is not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely, it's not just because you're doing Zoom. It shouldn't be lazy. You should still be putting effort into it, because if you're showing that you can put effort into having a thoughtful Zoom experience, then it's showing that you could be a thoughtful partner. And that's what we're kind of, as women, like, that's what we're looking to know. Like, oh, like, is he going to have his shit together? Like if a guy doesn't have like a living plant in his house, like that's not I don't want to share my life with that person. Like
it's a warning sign. You need a plant in the house.
You just need just one.
Just one. You're not asking for much, just one, not five. But you're right. You can now get an inside look into someone's apartment to see, before you're going to get intimate, hook up with someone, develop that physical connection. Is this someone I really want to meet in person?
Exactly. And it's funny because a lot of my male clients are like, I go into their apartments, and I'll see like how their stuff is, and they're like, oh, I didn't buy any art, and the walls are bare, and there's no plant, and I didn't get my outfits together because when I meet the woman I'm supposed to be with, and I'll just let her do that. And I was like, nah, you gotta do it. If you want to meet the woman, you got to do that before.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And Amy, I want to ask you, for the people who you work with who are looking to date in person, not over Zoom, they have Zoom fatigue, or they're just not comfortable interacting with someone on Zoom, what are the rules right now in 2021 for in-person dating? Are people exchanging COVID tests? Or, what are people looking, to require of the person that, he or she's going to meet in person?
It's been challenging for me to be like, these are the rules, because everyone has different comfort levels, and I don't want to put my ethics onto somebody else. And also I think you could imagine like from like a law perspective, like if I'm like, yeah, it's cool, go meet them, and then like they get COVID, like that's like
sure.
I can tell you what I've seen people doing. So after they do a couple of Zoom dates, one couple was really cute. They went to the testing place together to get their test. So their first date was getting their COVID test, which I thought was really sweet.
That is sweet. That is cute. Look, if you can make it, going like to get a COVID test together, you can survive, what's ahead.
This like postmodern, the new cute thing to do is get your COVID test, or, soon like get your vaccines together. And so there's that thing. There's been a lot of there, and it was crazy because one of my clients, she was signing in January, and I was like, don't you want to wait till March or April when it's less cold since you're going to be dating outside? And she's like, no, Amy, I invested in a very expensive heated blanket.
but I think
and it like, okay, so you have the blanket, but like, yeah, so is everyone just going to buy expensive blankets and like, wear those outside? But people have been making it work. No one, like, it's just, love doesn't stop, and it's not stopping for anyone. And so they're just getting very creative. They're going to the park. But it has been a lot of walks, lots and lots of walks.
And Amy, you're right. Love doesn't stop. The search for love, that doesn't stop either. And I think as we're now a year into the pandemic, I think people are looking for creative ways to date, creative ways to combine virtual dating, in-person dating, looking to do it in a safe and responsible way. But I'm hearing from my own clients that people are looking for a more meaningful connection. And not everybody, but a lot of people are looking for a more meaningful connection than ever before. And the virtual dating world has allowed people to get to know someone on a first date over Zoom, as opposed to necessarily going on a bad first date and then being turned off after you met someone on, let's say, Tinder. And obviously people have their own frustrations with the dating app world. But are you seeing people as spring and summer are on the horizon even more now? Are people looking to get back out there as opposed to a few months ago?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So in my 12 years, I thought that at the beginning of the pandemic, I was going to have to do a different job. I was like, no one's like, we can't meet each other. My job is to facilitate. I meet people in person and then I set them up to meet people in person. And so I thought that was it for matchmaking. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Like I don't have this like one skill set. I'm like very good at this one thing. And so I went through like a week period where it was like the beginning where no one knew what was going to happen, where it was just like radio silent. And then it's probably, I would say that like this week has been busier, that it's been my busiest week by probably 10 than all of my years combined.
And what do you attribute that to?
It's a huge spike. And like Match.com, which is like a website that is kind of out of date. It's, people had mostly switched over to, Bumble and Hinge and all this. Match had their busiest week ever. Like all of their stocks are going up and people are signing up in Match. Like it's an exit, like it's a huge trend. It's the craziest time for everyone is having the same thought all at once. It's the last stretch of winter. We've been alone. It's like, it's time. People are going, it's going to be crazy. People, whenever it's springtime and people are getting their vaccinations, people are going to be like making out it's going to be like the summer of love all over again, I think.
It's going to be a good time to walk in Central Park and see what's going on. But yeah. Look, the marriage industries, in many ways, they're recession proof because people, are always going to search for love, always going to want to find love. I'm sure it probably took a few months for people to figure out how to do it in a pandemic. But you're right. As we record this episode, end of February, as we head into March and then summer, people have that itch to get back out there, to start dating, to really find someone that they want to be in a serious relationship with.
And we also got more time. And so people in the past, they had busied up their life with all these extra things like, on Tuesdays I go to this thing, on Wednesdays is Pilates, and Thursday, but all of a sudden we were just in our houses. And so we had plenty of time. And so people had time to get to know each other, and you still have, and so this idea of like, oh God, it's a pandemic, there's nothing to be done. Like, like I myself am single and I'm like, I'm 35, right? Like in the world of matchmaking, I'm considered, positively geriatric. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm like, wait, for the first time in my life, I'm single. I'm at this age that becomes like, matchmakers start like thinking like, oh, Amy's a lost cause. She's 35. She's going to die.
No, and you mentioned, obviously the challenges, for clients and for you. I mean, did it take some time to adapt to this new world of dating?
Yeah. I mean, I myself, I was like an old timer matchmaker. Like I have like pieces of paper and pins. Like I didn't use a computer. I made an entire existence over not having to use computers. Like my assistant would do all my emails. Like I wouldn't touch a computer. I just sat in person on my little couch with my little clipboard, and I would just do this for 50 hours a week. And I would, and then I call my clients after their dates. I don't text them. I'm like, hey, how's it going?
And I'm sure as a matchmaker in the business, you could have never
we all had to learn together, right? Like I was like, I had to learn how to like get into Zoom.
And I'm sure you could have never predicted that this would have been, in many ways, dates would be taking place over Zoom and socially distant, and we would be living in a virtual world. I mean, I can't imagine this is something that you or anyone else in your business could have ever contemplated.
No. And, we all talk, we have message boards, and there's a huge matchmaking community, and we're all connected, and we matchmake our clients with each other's clients. And we all thought that this was going to be it at the beginning. And then it turned out that everyone got busier, and everyone's jobs, the matching got easier, and people are connecting more, because once you really stare at loneliness in the way that the pandemic has brought up, you really do value connection, and everyone's kind of having that awakening all at once.
And Amy, you mentioned loneliness, and I want to ask you about dating apps and online dating as opposed to working directly with a matchmaker such as yourself. Why do people get so frustrated at times and feel so lost in the dating app community? Some people don't know, the true intentions of someone. And why do people feel so out of place at times in the online dating world? It's
hard because you're dating by yourself. So there's no feedback, right? So if you don't hear from someone again, you don't know, did you do something wrong, or are people just assholes? There's no accountability. And you don't know, if you're not getting responses, are you dating outside of what you can kind of get? If a guy is trying to date, the most beautiful woman in the room that everyone's trying to date, he's not going to be successful if he's not able to kind of bring that. And so people aren't able to gauge, everyone's going for the same person. And so everyone else is getting ignored. But if you were just dating an actual person that would be a match for you, on your level, then you could get that. And so people are kind of reaching outside of what they can actually feasibly pull off. And so there's no feedback, and there's no information. There's no accountability. There's no community. These aren't people whenever you're matchmaking, everyone comes to me through a friend of a friend, someone went to someone's wedding. They're how did you meet? It was through Amy. And there's someone that's vouching for someone. And, people are more, it's more thoughtful. I think it is easier to treat people poorly, or to ghost, or to not show up when you have no connection to them ahead of time.
And Amy, you mentioned, people get referred or introduced to you through past clients, current clients, word of mouth. I would think as a matchmaker and someone who has, been involved in the New York City dating scene for, so long, and has set up, endless, amounts of, couples and relationships. I would think it gives you such great pleasure when, someone you set up has, found happiness, found love, and has found someone to spend the rest of their life together.
It's the best. It's honestly the best feeling in the world. I wish that everyone should go out and matchmake their friends, because there's nothing more beautiful than waking up in the morning. This morning I woke up and someone that was, I remember their search. They thought that they weren't going to meet anyone, and they thought they weren't going to get an opportunity to have a child with someone that they love. And they sent me pictures of their little baby that they just had. There's nothing great. These people, and it's crazy. Evan, you're not going to believe me, but I don't have any divorces.
And I was going to ask you, because
divorces.
And that's amazing to me. And again, because I work with so many people, that's all I do, who are going through a divorce, and people who are either in the middle of a divorce process or they're newly single, trying to navigate post-divorce life. And one of the questions I get from my clients is, I want to date again. I want to find love. I want to be out there. And I want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is getting out of a divorce, seeking to find love? What would you recommend? Because it can be scary for people.
Yeah. My clients, most of them, and I'm actually one of the few matchmakers that works with people that are in the process of getting divorced. I don't think that you have to wait for the paperwork to sign, because that could take a long time. And I find that some of the easiest people to matchmake are people that that have been married and are going through a divorce, because they know how to be married, And so people, a lot of my clients that have been single for a very long time, are actually harder to match than someone who's coming recently out of a divorce. So my favorite clients are men that are recently going through a divorce. And as long as they're invested in, they've done their personal work, and they're not just trying to immediately replace their wife with someone else, I find that those clients, I have to be very careful. I have to make sure, I can't just send them, the first date has to be the match, because oftentimes they will get married again within the year. But it's all about just being kind to yourself and knowing that it's a learning how to date, especially if you've been married for a long time. It's a totally different world. And it's okay to, at first it's going to be a little bit awkward, and, you're going to have lots of different emotions, and you're going to, the online dating thing's going to be confusing, and the dating protocols, and, the way that we negotiate gender and sex and feminism and all these things, it's a different landscape. And so, like, what's great is, not everyone can afford a matchmaker, but if you have a matchmaker, you have a little buddy that's on your side, kind of coaching you through it. But if you can't do that, just be kind with yourself and try, and some things will fail, and that's okay, because it's worth it. It's worth it to try and fail, because at the end of that journey, you could find happiness with someone that's going to, really vastly improve your life, and we can get it something better.
Amy, that's absolutely fantastic. And I know everyone's going to ask me, following, the release of this podcast, you've talked about how clients get referred to you, how clients can work with you. I know you work with only a select handpicked, clients at a time. How does someone make it into Amy's famous, Rolodex and get in touch with you?
Well, so anyone can be in my Rolodex, right? The reason why I've been so successful as a matchmaker is because I have so many people to choose for my clients, right? So I have a huge volume of people. And so anyone can, go onto my website, modernloveclub.com, and fill out the questionnaire, or anyone can book a 1-hour session with me. I'm super, trying to work in a really clear and ethical way. And so if I don't think I'm going to be helpful with someone, I'm not going to take on as a client. But, the way I pick who I work with is people that I like and that inspire me, that are open to improving themselves and changing. And so coachability and openness are kind of what are the number one things that I'm screening for in a possible collaboration with someone.
And Amy, as we wind down here on the Schein podcast, we're going to do something here that we haven't done before. And I'm going to read 2 questions that have come in to the Schein podcast by email from listeners. And as a reminder to everyone out there, the email address is scheinonpodcast@gmail.com. And the questions on dating, not only from my own clients as a divorce attorney, but from people who listen to the podcast. People are searching for love. They want to know the protocols, how to navigate dating in a pandemic. People are anxious. People want to get back out there and find love again. So let's tackle 2 of those questions. And the first is Erin from Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I'm 29 and a lawyer. I was married just for about a year to my college boyfriend, and then I got divorced. I just got it wrong. I married the wrong guy. I work a lot of hours. Meeting the right person has been hard for me. I've tried dating apps. Those haven't worked. I've been set up by friends. That hasn't worked either. Nobody seems to get what I'm looking for. Then the pandemic hit. That made it even harder. I'm ready to get back out there and start dating again. How can I navigate this?
So the most important thing to remember is that the only thing that we can control is our approach to things and our attitude. And so if the narrative that you're propagating is no one's getting me, it's not possible, and now the pandemic has made it even harder, well, that's going to be what's coming up. There's probably a series of things that you could do. Maybe there's something wrong with what your search is. Maybe your search is overly superficial. Maybe you're being too picky. Maybe you're filling up your life with work as a defense mechanism. Whenever someone's like saying it's not possible, I think there's something else at play. And so I encourage her in a loving way to kind of look at, well, are my expectations too picky? And then the other thing that is making dating really hard, especially for women in New York, is that there's more women than men. And so it's like, we're kind of at a statistical disadvantage. Like, it's like 10 women to like 6 guys. And of the 6 guys, maybe less of them are more serious or quality. And so it's an uneven playing field. And so I highly encourage, if you feel like the area where you're living at is not turning up matches, to open up the search, check out what's the scene like in Chicago? What's the scene like, because in New York City, it's a little bit unbalanced, the male to the female thing. But I think that there's probably something that she's doing to perpetrate. Maybe there's some healing that needs to happen that she hasn't processed. And that's, there's a block there, and figuring, instead of blaming, like, it's this, that, or the other, like, I would encourage her to figure out what she could do better to more likely attract someone that she's interested in.
Amy, that's great advice. And before we get to the second question, I want to pick up on something you said. I know you work with both women and men, but historically, the matchmaking business, the matchmaking industry, many matchmakers predominantly only worked with men. Your approach is different.
Yeah, it was crazy. When I started matchmaking, there was no matchmakers that would take women on as clients. And so the old model was much older men that were very wealthy dating like Eastern European, like 20-year-old women, it was like a casting. It was like, you're old and rich and they're young and pretty. And so that was the entire matchmaking scene when I came on. And I was like, wait, what about like matching for like, what if like we could make matchmaking cool? Like what if someone just like is like wants a more curated experience? And so yeah, it was crazy that I was the first person to have a dating agency around here that gave women agency with their dating. It was crazy. And it's still that way. It's still very much, the matchmaking world very much is mostly, men paying the matchmakers and then the matchmakers casting kind of women to go out with them. It's very strange.
Interesting. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And Amy, the second question is from Marin from Mott Street in New York City, one of my favorite areas in New York. Marin says, I've been on a few Zoom dates with the same guy. He's the only person I'm dating virtually. I'm ready to meet in person, and I feel it's safe to do so. How do you bring that up and have the conversation? What are the rules? He hasn't asked to meet in person or mentioned it.
And I'm seeing that like a lot of men are not making the first move lately, and that's okay. I think they're trying to be considerate. I think there's going to be some vulnerability being like, I've never dated in a pandemic, but I would be interested in seeing like what happens next. What is your comfort level? How can we both negotiate what will, make both of us happy? Because you don't want to get into this pattern of just dating on Zoom forever, right? Like I don't want to be a woman inside of a computer screen. I want to be a real life person that's, touching and meeting someone. And so, yeah, just being like, hey, I've never done this before. What's your feelings on meeting in person? And, like, how can we do this together? Like, there's no right way to do it. I just ask. It's
a great answer. And Amy, I got to tell you, this was absolutely a blast. It was a lot of fun. Amy Van Doran, the best in the business, the founder of the Modern Love Club, the coolest matchmaker in New York City. Amy, how can people get in touch with you and reach out?
Sure. Yeah. I got a website, modernloveclub.com. You just go right over there and I'm right there. I'm very reachable.
Amy,
I love to be reached out to. Because the more people that reach out, the better matches I can make. And we can just we can just make beautiful couples. And let's just keep making more love happen.
There we go. And Amy, thank you for coming on the Schein podcast. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, it's so fun, Evan. Thank you.
Dave, another great show on the Schein podcast, episode 8 in the books. And this was an absolute blast. Being single, dating during the pandemic, the rules, how to navigate it. We got all the answers from expert matchmaker, the best in the business, Amy Van Doran, and she was incredible. She was excellent. Thank you for listening to the Schein podcast. To the listeners on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever else you listen to your podcast, thank you as always for listening. Producer David Yaz, making it happen behind the scenes. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, and email at scheinonpodcast@gmail.com. I'm Evan Schein, and we'll talk to you again real soon.